Soren!
Hi.
Welcome back.
Yes,
I know.
I'm back. It's so exciting. I didn't think that this was going to be happening.
You know what? It almost didn't. We'll talk more about that.
That's true.
Welcome back. I'm so excited to join you back in the podcast studio for another episode of Inspired Insights.
Yes, I think that after our first episode, we're ready to really get running with it.
I do too. And I feel like we got some really good feedback from friends and family. Listeners and viewers are going to see more angles. We've got 3 recording devices happening right now. We've got a recording device actually happening right now. So I'm ready. How you feeling?
I'm feeling really spectacular today.
Yeah.
I just came off of 8 hours of sleep. First time this week. Woo woo.
Nice.
And we got set up by our lead producer, Amanda Seidel.
Yeah. She hooked us up today.
Yeah. So we're no longer relying on the, I guess, logistics of me, which is subpar at best.
We'll talk about that. We'll definitely talk about that. How's the week?
My week was, I'd say, interesting. We're really gearing up for AP test season, and I got my SAT score back, which it was fine. I got a 1350, but
that's a better than fine definition.
No, it was bad. My calculator died halfway through the math section, so I had to use the provided calculator. It was awful, but I think although it's a good score, I have felt really bad about it. I keep ruminating on it.
Oh, really?
Because just everybody in my class is doing at my level or better.
Yeah.
My cousin got a far better score than me.
Yeah. So for the transparency, vulnerability, and validation, was this the second time you took this?
No, first time.
This is your only first time?
Yeah.
My second SAT score was about 200 points lower than your first time score.
Well, it was a different format back then, right? What was the atmosphere around testing in your high school situation?
So that's a great question. So I feel like I was in the high school courses that I were in. Clearly why my SAT scores maybe weren't as great. But I was in those AP. I think what you're referring to AP, back in my day, they were thought of as college prep, that kind of stuff. So I had all those kids in my classes. And I remember them talking about 12 somethings and 13 somethings. And math was never and has never been my strong point. In fact, I remember in high school, my brother is 2 grades. He's a year and a half younger than me, but 2 grades below me. And I was in my junior and senior year in high school, was in his math class, 2 full grades below.
Yeah.
Every other course, I was in that crowd of kids, except for math. So I knew going into SATs that my math was going to be a tough spot. But to answer your question, I remember there being a lot of just desks and chairs and a couple, I guess they would call them proctors, a couple faculty of the school kind of hanging around. I remember pressure was high. I remember didn't really quite know what to expect. And I remember leaving with this mixture of relief and there goes my college aspiration.
Well, I nowadays, not a lot of emphasis, at least from colleges, is placed on SATs or standardized testing overall. But I think there's more of an atmosphere around it.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't have the experience of being in high school back in the 90s or early 2000s.
The 1890s, yeah.
1920s.
Yeah.
High schools weren't really around back then. But,
yeah.
But I think that the atmosphere that I have going on in school, which I really enjoy, is jovial and hyper competitive with the other kids in the classes
around the academics.
Yeah, around academics. I always kind of struggle with that because I am so bad at work completion, like so bad at work completion. And like, you were talking about how you hate mathematics. I feel like so many really smart kids just can't do math.
Yeah.
And it doesn't detract from their intelligence at all. But like, I think math is like the only class that they properly created like strata for in middle school.
Yeah.
So it did like create some, I guess, hierarchy of intellectual ability based around something that is not necessarily indicative of one's like intelligence.
True aptitude.
Yeah, true aptitude.
Yeah,
for
here's
life
the,
success.
when I think about the career I have now and sort of my pathway over the last 20 something years of being a social worker, and there's a very established stereotype about social workers go into social work because we can't do math. Like we are scared of math. But what I've realized across my career is the type of math that's been front and center is not the math that I was doing in high school.
Yeah.
Or even in college for that matter. Like the math that I needed for my career, like if I could go back in time, I would have taken the quote unquote business classes to budget and to be able to set some of those financial goals, to track progress, some of the metrics that go into some of that, again, quoting business math that for some terrible reason, 30-ish years ago was seen as a step below the AP or the college level math. And as I reflect on it now, and we talk about this all the time in some of my circles, I wish that I had been given more opportunity to learn how to balance a checkbook, learn how to create a budget, learn how to figure out percentages. I didn't need calculus. I didn't need like advanced, I don't even know what's above calculus. I didn't need that. What I needed was somebody to teach me how to find, look at revenues and trend revenues or expenses over years. That's what I needed.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like school, a lot of the like academic emphasis is placed on things that lack utility in like the modern world, right? Like I think that honestly for like mathematics, you can exist in society as a layman having like passed 8th grade pre-algebra and you'll be doing fantastic. Like actually this year I'm taking AP statistics and I think of the math classes that I've taken, it's one of the more useful ones because it allows for such a better understanding of like demographics and it allows me to interpret scientific articles considerably better because once you know the like statistical method which scientists are using to derive a conclusion, it's so much easier to understand I guess sort of the processes of experiment. But I guess that's getting into the weeds of it.
Well, but I think that's an important point. Like that, as you're describing that course, that's something that would have so much utility for me even today. I live in this world today of looking at research and looking at studies and looking at trend lines across different demographics. And to be able to understand the relationship between those facts and figures would far exceed the usefulness of what even my middle school and high school math, even my college math did.
Well, I think like a lot of kids, at least in my classes, like I was talking to one of my friends in HBC the other day, and we were solving matrices.
As you do.
Yeah. Well, it was like the beginning of the year. Matrices aren't that hard. Anyway, sorry. It's literally just systems of equations.
Yeah.
Anyway, it like has zero utility for anything unless I am a computer attempting to figure out what color a pixel needs to be.
Yeah.
I don't need to use matrices.
Yeah.
And like we are spending so much time and like the emphasis that is placed, like is primarily placed on these classes that aren't going to be useful unless you're pursuing a master's or a doctorate in a STEM field.
Yeah.
And like high schools are set up to prepare children for higher education rather than prepare children for the workforce.
Yes, to prepare some kids for that track. But to your point, even that preparation, if that's not, it is the world according to Chris here. It's the exception to the rule that somebody who's a sophomore or junior in high school knows exactly what they're going to be doing 4, 6, 8, 10 years down the road.
I totally agree.
And so not knowing how something's going to be useful, like I remember thinking back then that stereotype again of I'm never going to use this shrug. Like, this is never going to be useful in my practical world. And sure enough, some of it actually has been. So lesson to kid, like that stereotype, that trope of it is going to be useful. You just don't know it yet is there. But what I love about this conversation, and again, we talk about this and you referenced this relationship between standardized testing and preparing one for college or actually speaking to one's readiness to go to college. And there is just so much debate and discussion across numerous fields right now around, is standardized testing truly assessing one's aptitude, one's intelligence, or is it testing your ability to answer a multiple choice test and fill in the bubbles on the scorecard?
Well, I totally agree, right? Like, and a lot of colleges have stopped using the SATs as a metric for deciding whether or not they're going to let students in. But actually, a lot of colleges are transitioning back to using SATs as a metric after COVID. Like, don't quote me here, I don't know if this is accurate, but I think MIT transitioned back to using SATs as like a mandatory metric.
Wow.
And I was talking to my stats teacher the other day, and he was like harping on how useful SATs are to determine whether or not a student's going to succeed in college. Like, he was saying that there's a strong relationship between SAT scores and average college GPA, which I don't know if that reflects on intelligence or rather whether or not somebody's willing to put in the work to get a good SAT score.
And maybe this is what I'm about to say is a bit of an unpopular or controversial opinion, but I truly believe this, that correlation between one's SAT score and their college GPA might be about their intelligence, their readiness, or their ability to regurgitate the information.
Yeah. Well, like this is gonna get a little like strong-minded, but I always think that school isn't about like learning things per se. It's about forcing yourself to go to a place that you don't enjoy being at and work for 8 hours a day, then go home and work more so that you can do that for the rest of your life, right? Like,
I could not agree with you more.
Yeah. It's more about the preparing a kid to do something that they don't like for 5 days a week for most of their year, and getting them ready to do that consistently until they retire.
Yeah, I think what you're saying that I'm agreeing with is this idea that school serves a larger or maybe multiple purposes beyond just reading, writing, arithmetic, that kind of stuff. That there is for lack of a better word, a life skill that goes into preparing a young person for what the professional world of our country's culture is. And we live in a country where it's a 40+ hour week, 5 days a week, very traditional like schedule. And I think there's an element of public education that mirrors what the adult expectation of so many of us is.
100%.
Today's episode has been brought to you by the Inspired Ally Certificate Program for educators looking to better partner with LGBTQ+ youth and their families. You know, to bring this like full circle, when we were talking about the purpose of school and education, remember back then? Remember
oh my goodness.
You know, in my utopian wish list of our world, that's a function that I wish public education could take on, is in addition to teaching advanced statistics and mathematics and theology and all those pieces, how do we support schools in embracing a curriculum of introspection, of helping young people know themselves in an environment that hopefully is safe and affirming and conducive to whatever that young person discovers in themselves during this process? It's okay to share it.
I think that schools provide the primary means of like social skill development for most kids. And I think I totally agree with you. They should incorporate a means of internal development and emotional development for kids, which I don't think that the American education system does a good job at emphasizing at all.
Yeah, well, you can't measure it. It's hard to measure. So if you can't measure it, what use is it? And I'm being facetious, obviously, but, thinking about standardized testing, there's no standardized evidence-based test of, hey, Soren, how well do you know you?
Yeah. Well, that actually is something that I really want to study the brain, like from like a chemical and physical level.
Yeah, it fascinates me.
Yeah, and it's so complex. And my like primary desire in my lifetime is to attempt to unravel the complexity that is human experience from a like standardized metric.
Yeah.
Today's episode has been brought to you by the Inspired Ally Certificate Program. Modules designed to inspire confidence and competence in better partnering with LGBTQ plus communities.
Because it's also bringing me back to this idea of education. And it's bringing me back to the purpose of education systems. And, as you're talking about what fascinates you and what interests you and what drives passion in you, I was sitting here also thinking that, like the pressure on schools. And here I am saying like, schools need to do this and this and this.
Yeah.
And it's not my intent to like lay these edicts of more and more, because you and I both know all too well that in addition to teaching the basics, schools are also supporting the arts and music and theater and teaching the social skills of what working and living in the adult world is going to be like. And schools are some of our country's largest mental health systems as well, supporting the emotional wellness needs of kids of all ages as well. So for the educators in my life out there listening, I just want to apologize. Like I'm not saying school's doing a terrible job. I'm dreaming big, which is a part of what you and I both also have in common. And wouldn't it be great if we could figure out a better balance of this, and this?
Yeah.
So if kids are going to spend 6 to 8 hours every single day in this environment, how do we support it to be as useful and supportive as it could be?
I totally agree with that. And I would say all of the like teachers that I interact with on a daily basis. And I think that a lot of the administrative staff of our school are pretty all right. It's a systemic constructive criticism, rather than an individual.
Yeah, that's so important. Oh, you said that so much better than I was.
We're not attempting to attack teachers, and teachers are trying to do their absolute best with such limited resources.
In every sense of the word.
Yeah, exactly.
Time, personnel, money, materials.
Exactly. Like we have given individual teachers like very few resources, and we are giving them a task which used to be like literally a village's work. And we're heaping it on these individuals that like oftentimes nobody has infinite emotional energy to attempt to create and foster a fantastic environment for the hundreds of students who come into their class every day.
In an environment where they are so often thought of as public enemy number one.
Yeah.
Like in the environment of gender ideology and wokeness and all of these other criticisms that a minority, a loud minority, a vocal minority, that's the narrative they're pushing. And so I love that. I love that you said this, you're saying this, because it honors that teachers are doing the best they can with what they have in the moment in an environment where they are so ridiculed and targeted and attacked for either doing too much or not enough.
Yeah. Exactly.
Lose.
And you're on the school board, right?
I am on a school board.
I just watching from the sidelines, some people that come to school board meetings and are so critical and misinformed, and yet so violent and vile in their attacks of individuals. Like, what's your experience with that?
Oh, it's like hashtag if you know, you know, right? Yeah, Soren, you know, it is, it's reminiscent, the current realities for myself and many like me in these elected local offices, whether it's school or town or what have you. It's very reminiscent of how I was describing my childhood to you. You know, it's this, it's bullying. It is a form of bullying. And my heart goes out to the teachers in these communities that are truly being held hostage or under attack by a very vocal minority who are pushing a narrative for very personal agendas. And, you know, in my best moments, in my social work guru on the mountain moments, I can take a trauma-informed perspective with even those individuals and say, you know, what has happened to this person or this group of people to act in this way? What needs are being met? What past traumas are being explored and maybe repeated in this moment? But to be really candid with you and with our listeners, it's tougher and tougher and tougher to keep that trauma-informed perspective with people who are so intent on hurting somebody else or groups of somebody else's.
No, I totally agree. And that's something that I've had like a lot of, I guess, banter about with my mother.
Who also has experience in serving on the school board. Yeah, she was on the school board
for like 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, she did a couple terms. Bless her heart.
At my school. And like, I've talked to her because obviously I sit on the sidelines. I don't really engage with these people, but also I try to take like a very trauma-informed position. And like, I don't feel upset or attacked when people are spewing these awful things. I feel sad almost because like, that's sad that person is so, I guess, ideologically entrenched in this dogmatic
misguided
perspective, that they feel the need to say these things and stuff like that. And
I'm not even, sorry to interrupt, I'm not even convinced that all of these folks truly believe.
Like,
you know, some of it is there's this need for attention and fame and fortune, and I'm using air quotes purposely, that, you know, that the vocal few have found some notoriety, not just in our towns and in our state. This is a national movement at foot of creating chaos, creating mistrust in these established systems like education to meet other needs.
And it's so, I love that you said that, because I like talking to my grandfather who watches news all day. He is so empathetic, and throughout his entire life has devoted himself to charity and very formative, inclusive organizations like CISV. He put a lot of
Children's
work
International Summer Village.
It's like a international nonprofit that works on building global friendships.
Student exchanges.
Basically. And he has welcomed into his home many children from all over the world and is such a great guy. But then I have conversations with him and he'll go from being so empathetic and kind and loving and not bigoted to just spewing the punchlines that he hears on news all day. And I'm like, how do you have such like a kind heart and yet you're so able to say such hateful, damaging things, which like a lot of these people don't realize the negative impact that they're having.
Yeah.
And
it speaks to the toxic nature of of some of those narratives and messages.
Yeah.
That how like the best pop culture songs, the earworms, these messages, this narrative finds its way in somebody's unconscious brain and festers and grows. And the best harmful narratives are the narratives that play on safety, nationalism, you know, what we talked about earlier. These messages that create doubt and confusion about your safety, the safety of your loved ones, who's coming for your jobs, your materials, your goods, your housing, your kids.
And the people on the left are guilty of this as well.
Sure.
Right?
For
like
sure.
I don't mean to specifically touch on people on the right. Like, and like legacy media on the left and on the right is dedicated to pushing division.
Yes.
And fear, right?
Yes.
And like people on the left are stuck in dogmatic ideology and refuse to step out of it
equally as guilty.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. However, those of us on the left, it's easier for us to deny that is happening because we tend to feel like we own the moral high ground.
Yeah, yeah.
So we can camp out there and say, but at least the stuff that we're listening to isn't fill in the blanks.
No, I totally agree. And like social issues are super important, but social issues have been pushed so forcefully onto the American public that we refuse to look at economic disparities, for example,
right? Which
is a social issue. Like, I think, perhaps a bit conspiracy theory, it is beneficial for the current, say, fairly corrupt system in place for us as individuals to fight as individuals and work against each other rather than work with each other to foster a better environment for everybody. Right. So I think that these social divisions and like ideological wars, who are they benefiting?
Right.
They're not benefiting us as individuals.
That's right. And the folks that are benefiting are sitting back watching us as consumers of this stuff go at it while other agendas are at play. Well, I don't think that's conspiracy theory, Soren. I think what I know in my adult life is more folks are getting aware that this dynamic is happening. We may not be able to put our finger on it, but we know it's happening, yet we're falling victim to it over and over again.
Well, it's like, I just think of the dumpster fire metaphor. We're a bunch of trash in a dumpster fire and we're surrounded by fire. Of course we're going to catch flame, but we are all trash. And the man who lit the fire is standing out, getting the warmth from it.
That's right.
Yeah.
I love that
throwing
analogy.
More trash in.
Right. Who's lighting the match? Who's dumping the gasoline? All of those kind of metaphors. Like I can see it so clearly in my head. And yet you asked me about school board experience. When you are in that, are in the middle of that fire and all you see around you is fire and smoke, you can't see who's on the other side of that ring.
And you're going to catch a flame as well.
And it's about what do you then do to protect yourself from catching on fire?
Yeah.
Maybe you start throwing the trash or diverting the gasoline to those other folks around you as their survival skill.
Yeah. Which actually ties back in directly to what we were saying about like in schools, kids pushing or leading focus to other people who are struggling.
I name called other effeminate boys.
Yeah.
To divert the attention of, because I was that effeminate boy. And so when the world is on fire, when you deflect that gasoline in another direction, or the flames in another direction, like that's hard to sit with.
Yeah.
And it's a survival skill, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I think we've
quite
we've met some of the goals of this podcast.
Yeah.
Of sharing some truth in our, from our perspectives, our experiences, hopefully inspiring some conversations, hopefully giving folks some permission to have some of these conversations as much with themselves as with other people. And let's call it a day.
Totally. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope that this cultivates an audience, and feel free to reach out to me or Chris.
100%. And thank you, Soren, for your willingness to have this conversation, for being who you are, and for just sitting in this space with me.
Well, I wouldn't have a platform without you, so.
I'm happy. I'm happy to give you that platform. So thanks all. This has been Inspired Insights Podcast with Chris McLaughlin.
And Soren Peterson.
And we'll see you next time.
Indeed. Bye.
The Inspired Insights Podcast has been brought to you by Inspired Consulting Group, LLC.
Edited and produced by Amanda Seidel.
Music by Derek Herda. Copyright 2024, all rights reserved.